Number 10. Bullet Man and Bullet Girl. This crime-fighting duo were a husband and wife who both got their powers from equipment that they wore, namely a gravity regulator helmet that, you guessed it, looks like a bullet. These helmets both help them to fly while also making them bulletproof, which is pretty cool. I guess while their helmets were active, you could say, that's when they would be bulletproof. Bullet Man and Bullet Girl were also originally from Fawcett Comics and would team up regularly with Captain Marvel, as he was known then, and his sister Mary Marvel, now both known as members of the Shazam family. Being able to fly and being bulletproof back in the day was actually considered to be pretty impressive, though not really impressive enough to give Bullet Man and Bullet Girl much staying power throughout the years. As you know, this is probably like the first time you've heard them mentioned, possibly ever. And friends, before we move on to the next spot on our list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to show us you love us by clicking that subscribe button. Number 9. Batman. Although Batman has been heartily adapted to the modern age, he originated all the way back in the Golden Age. Batman first appeared in Detective Comics issue number 27 way back in 1939. And in fact, the comic he debuted in is the one DC gets their name from. DC actually stands for Detective Comics, which is the series that Batman first appeared in. So really, when we say DC Comics, it's kind of redundant. It's like saying Detective Comics comics. Although otherwise people might think you're talking about DC, the place, instead of DC the publisher, if you just say DC. So you might confuse people doing that. Batman might not have superpowers to speak of, but back in his heyday he didn't really need them. Back then, Batman had immensely strong plot armor, even stronger I would say than he has today, and even when it seemed like he didn't really have a plan, he would turn around and explain how actually everything he had done up until this point, including possibly things that we all thought were horrible mistakes while reading the issue, were all part of his intricate plot to apprehend the criminal. Batman's so smart. And hey, it always worked too, even his most crazy plans. This was also back when Bruce had not just the Batmobile, but also the Batplane and the Batboat. This Batman is no longer considered to be the same one we have today though, instead being designated as the Earth 2 variant. Number 8. Marvel Boy. There have been many Marvel Boys, and in fact, even 2 within the span of the Golden Age itself. For this point though, we are focusing on Martin Burns' Marvel Boy, who made his first appearance in Daring Mystery Comics issue number 6 in 1940, I believe the very first Marvel Boy, back when Marvel Comics was actually known as Timely Comics, despite the fact that, you know, we have Marvel Boy, so you would think it's Marvel Comics, but nah, this is Timely Comics. This Marvel Boy was often compared to Hercules when it came to his level of strength, and he actually appeared 5 years before Hercules would even be introduced to Timely Comics. Martin Burns was said to possess such strength because he was believed to actually be a reincarnation of Hercules. Number 7. Tonto. You didn't think I was going to talk about Lone Ranger and just like leave Tonto out of this list, did you? Tonto was originally shown as Lone Ranger's native partner and was part of the Comanche tribe originally. Some may think of him as just a sidekick, but as time progressed his character tended to be more presented as an equal and partner to the Lone Ranger rather than just a sidekick. He got his own comic book spin-off series in the 50s titled The Lone Ranger's Companion Tonto, and was often depicted as being witty and sarcastic, even going on to mock other less favorable portrayals of himself in pop culture that made him seem more savage. I like when heroic characters are self-aware and sassy like that. I feel it. Deadpool, She-Hulk, Tonto. Keep being sassy, keep being witty. Number 6. Namor. Namor is one of my favorite Golden Age superheroes, and of course, he also happens to be Marvel's first mutant. Also, I believe appearing back when Marvel was Timely, but still, we count him retroactively as mutants did not yet exist in the comics at the time of his first appearance, but still, it counts. Namor made his first appearance in Motion Picture Funnies Weekly issue number 1 in 1939. He is also a character that I find not as many people know about when we talk about like pop culture, mainstream superheroes or anti-heroes, despite the fact that he's been around even longer than some of the others who are more well known, and despite the fact that he's often considered to be one of the most powerful superheroes over at Marvel. Though hopefully his appearance in Wakanda Forever will help to change some of that. At least I feel like they made him seem like pretty strong in that movie, which I think will be helpful for giving him some more pop culture staying power. Number 5. Wonder Woman. One of the greatest heroes of all time, Wonder Woman. And also also one of the most powerful, and also one of the oldest, making her first appearance back in the Golden Age in 1940. Like the other classic heroes of old, the Golden Age Wonder Woman also ended up as an Earth 2 variant, despite being technically the original. She made her first comic book appearance in All-Star Comics issue number 8 in 1942. Despite the weakness of her bracers, where if her bracelets of submission were bound together by a man, she would become powerless, I would still say to this day she remains one of the most powerful Golden Age superheroes of all time, thanks to her superhuman strength, speed, and durability back then. Oh yeah, and old school Wonder Woman was also telepathic as well, and she had tons of gadgets and equipment, from her lasso of truth to her special earrings, invisible plane, and her tiara, which could actually also help her to understand and speak various languages. Number 4. Superman. Superman really set the bar when it came to heroics. He made his first appearance in Action Comics issue number 1 in 1938, kicking off the start of the Golden Age. In a way, he pretty much sums up that era of comics, representing and defining it pretty epically. Superman back in the day was also seen as extremely powerful, and as time would go on, it would seem that he could pretty much do just about anything you needed him to do in a story in order to save the day, which was also kind of the time period and how writing was back then. It made him an unstoppable force of good, as it seemed no villain could ever overcome him. Superman isn't just known for being a powerful superhero though, but he's also often presented as being kind, intelligent, and also stood to represent some of the morals and aspirations of the day, at least initially. While the character may change over the years, with time affecting how he's characterized, there will also always remain a little spark of the Golden Age within him, especially with Golden Age Superman, who would later be retconned as being from Earth 2, literally a different Superman than the one that we have in main continuity today. Number 3. The Flash. I know people are gonna think this is controversial, but I'm standing by it. It feels weird putting the Flash, even for me, above Superman on, a most powerful list. The fact remains though that Jay Garrick actually has less weaknesses than Golden Age Superman, I'd say, and was still exceptionally powerful. In fact, while Superman is sometimes touted in the comics as being even faster than the Flash, Jay, as the Golden Age Flash, has been attributed with the ability to absorb the speed of other moving objects, and use that momentum to basically boost himself, which means that even if Superman could run or fly super fast, Jay would still, in theory, be faster. Now granted, this ability was showcased in the early 2000s in DC First Flash/Superman, and it was actually an ability that was learned by Jay from one of the fastest speedsters and Flashes around, Wally West, who is the modern day Flash. But the reality is, while Golden Age Superman got relegated to Earth 2, Jay was able to stay in the more main continuity of New Earth. Well, New Earth was the main continuity until Prime Earth came along, that is. DC continuity. So this means that Jay in essence saw more progression in terms of his powers, whereas the Superman of Earth 2, like so many other heroes, was permanently stuck in the Golden Age, for better or for worse. And in this case, I'd say for worse, because now that Jay knows how to do that, he could have just come along and just zapped Superman's powers. Although that Superman is, I believe, now gone, so. Number 2. Dr. Fate. Dr. Fate is an exceptionally powerful hero who was also permitted to grow in power and story, as he himself ended up in the New Earth continuity as well, despite making his first appearance in 1940 in More Fun Comics issue number 55. I feel like there were a lot of powerhouses introduced in that anthology series actually, and then of course there was also a bunch of average everyday heroes who didn't have powers and were just, doing their best. Dr. Fate though had power enough for everyone featured. Considering that Kent Nelson has basically limitless power through magic and also immense knowledge with which to wield it, he can do almost anything as Dr. Fate, especially while armed with the Helmet of Fate. Although it should be noted, in his earlier days his power wasn't quite so limitless, with him being vulnerable to magic exertion from constant spell casting, knockout gas, and asphyxiation. But hey, Superman has that magic weakness, so still think that Dr. Fate trumps him a little bit. Number 1. The Spectre. The Spectre is one of the most powerful beings in the whole universe, never mind just in the Golden Age. He also definitely earns his place above everyone else on this list, considering his long list of abilities from immortality and invulnerability to limitless power, which he can use to travel to other worlds, know all, transmute matter, and reality warp. Like Jay, although the Spectre hails from the Golden Age, appearing first in More Fun Comics issue number 52, he would also stand the test of time, later being incorporated into the New Earth continuity.
Number 10. HELLCAT. This Marvel character has a bit of an odd history that I couldn't resist going into a bit. When Patsy Walker first appeared in 1944's second issue of Miss America magazine, she was just a regular teen whose problems weren't exactly on a super level. In fact, her first story involved her trying to raise enough money so that she could attend a concert so that she could convince the heartthrob in the band to be her date to the school dance. She entered the main Marvel continuity in Millie the Model number 103 in 1961 when it was revealed that the comics featuring her had been based on her life and had been written by her mother. It was later revealed that she had developed a fascination with superheroes and wanted to become one, even making Beast of the X-Men promise to help her become a superhero in exchange for keeping his identity a secret. It wasn't until 1975 that she found one of Tigra's discarded cat suits that she achieved this goal and became HELLCAT. The clawed suit gave her heightened strength, speed, agility, and reflexes, and after prolonged exposure to the suit, she also developed psionic powers that allowed her to move objects with her mind and resist mind control. So, while she wasn't actually a superhero until the Bronze Age, the fact that she has such an interesting history and was first introduced as a character in the Golden Age makes her worth giving a slot to, even if it is the bottom spot. Number 9. WHIZZER. When Robert Frank was on an expedition in Cameroon, he was bitten by a cobra. A mongoose then showed up and fought the cobra, killing it before succumbing to its wounds. Robert's father, Dr. Emil Frank, remembered an old wives' tale and, lacking any better ideas, injected his son with the mongoose's blood in an effort to save his life. Against all odds, Robert had a latent mutant gene which reacted with the blood and granted him superhuman speed. He returned to the United States and became a costumed crime fighter known as the WHIZZER, because he can whiz past things fast, not because he's... You know what? Moving on. When the States entered World War II, WHIZZER was one of the heroes who helped the Allied forces triumph against villains like the Red Skull. WHIZZER's super speed was impressive for its time, but compared to more modern speedsters, it's pretty rudimentary. For example, in his prime, WHIZZER was able to reach a top speed of about 100 miles per hour. In contrast, one of Marvel's other speedsters, North Star, is capable of running at 189,299 miles per hour, and Quicksilver is even faster than that, being able to outrun microwaves at 228,350 miles per hour. And don't even get me started on the speeds that the DC speedsters can reach. WHIZZER isn't a particularly remembered character, but he was loosely adapted for the screen and briefly appeared in the Netflix Jessica Jones TV show. Number 8. Blazing Skull. First appearing in Mystic Comics number 5 in 1940, Mark Anthony Todd was a reporter covering the Second Sino-Japanese War when an artillery bombing forced him to take shelter in a cave that was populated by a race of people with flaming skulls called the Skullmen. They told Mark that destiny had chosen him to be a hero, and they trained him in their ways. When in his flaming skull mode, he has super strength and becomes nearly indestructible, possessing a limited ability to control fire. On top of this, he also has a powerful healing factor, which has prevented him from aging since receiving his powers. He was yet another hero who fought during World War II for the Allied forces, once being captured and tortured by the Fuhrer himself, who he made fun of so hard that the mustachioed art school reject ran out of the room crying. In the years since the war, he has joined a couple different superhero teams such as the Invaders and Howard the Duck's team, the Ducky Dozen.
Number 7. Hercules. Oddly enough, while Marvel Boy was known as the reincarnation of Hercules, it turned out Hercules was actually alive and well somehow. Of course, this was the Golden Age, when continuity wasn't really a thing yet, and stories went to all kinds of wacky places without much follow-up or much consequence. Hercules was introduced at Timely Comics 5 years after Marvel Boy in Young Allies issue number 16 in 1945, and he even shared a co-creator with Marvel Boy. Martin Burns' Marvel Boy was created by Jack Kirby and Joe Simon, while Hercules was created by Jack Kirby, Charles Nicholas, and Stan Lee. Since his introduction, Hercules has had a lot more adventures than Martin, so obviously he has been established as more powerful in the comics. Also, being the genuine Hercules instead of a reincarnation, of course, he would be more skilled and more powerful. And of course, we all know who he is, but I think now when you say Marvel Boy, most people would think of Novar, so poor Martin, people don't really know about him.
Number 6. Blue Diamond. First appearing in Daring Mystery Comics number 7 in 1941, Professor Elton Morrow was a scientist exploring the Arctic when he found a mysterious gigantic diamond which was emitting a strange blue glow. On his ship ride back home to the United States, his boat was sunk by a German U-boat and he was forced to to use the box containing the jewel as a flotation device. He was spotted and the Germans opened fire on him, blowing up the box. The shrapnel of the diamond was lodged in his body, making his skin as hard as diamonds and making him super strong and mostly invulnerable. He became one of the many costumed crime fighters who enlisted to fight in the war, having several adventures that were adapted into comic books within the Marvel Universe. After the war, he continued his superheroics before eventually retiring to Cape Cod. Years later, the Star Dancer came to him, saying he was her perfect partner. She used her cosmic powers to transform him into a fully diamond-like man and gave him the ability to fly off with his new love into the cosmos. Number 5. Marvel Boy. Introduced at the tail end of the Golden Age in 1950's Marvel Boy number 1, Robert Grayson was introduced as the son of a Jewish scientist who fled the planet at the start of the Second World War. They traveled the stars until they found a place to hide: Uranus. Much to their surprise, they found out that Uranus is actually heavily populated by Uranian Eternals. They accepted the travelers, and Robert and his father were allowed to stay in Uranus. Robert was given a supersuit as well as a pair of energy bracelets which allowed him to manipulate gravity and light, which allowed him to fly and blind his enemies. He was also given a headband that lets him control his spaceship with his mind and gives him telepathic powers that allow him to read and control minds. He returned to Earth and began to fight crime as Marvel Boy. Marvel Boy only lasted for about a year before being shelved for almost 30 years by Marvel Comics. He was featured in an issue of What If in 1978 and was eventually brought into the mainstream continuity with a slightly revised origin in 2001. In this new version, Marvel Boy also has super strength and stamina, and now that he is a grown man, goes by the alias Uranian. Number 4. Jack Frost. Jack Frost was one of the first characters created by Stan Lee with Charles Nicholas at Timely Comics, the company that would eventually become Marvel, in 1941. The character has no solid origin, with even he not knowing where he came from, but for as long as he could remember, he had always been in the Arctic. His first story in USA Comics number 1 involves him coming across a dying man in the Arctic who tells him that his business associate has murdered him and is going to go after his daughter. Jack vows to stop the villain and goes to the States to find him. He shows up at the police commissioner's office offering to help fight crime, but after demonstrating his powers, a misunderstanding causes the police to think he's a criminal. He finds the bad guys and saves the man's daughter. The main villain starts a fire, which Jack manages to escape from with the woman. The woman tells him he should save the criminal so he can stand trial, and Jack says, "Nah, I'm gonna let him burn." She responds that letting a man burn to death isn't very heroic and is practically murder. A passing cop hears this and adds murder to Jack's rap sheet. Jack gets angry and vanishes, leaving only a pair of monogrammed icicles behind. Jack is able to use water vapors to create ice, snow, and sleet, which he uses for a variety of purposes such as causing blizzards or making elaborate ice constructs. He is also super strong and durable. The character appeared in 4 issues of comics before being shelved and eventually brought back in 1976. He has made very sporadic appearances since then, not showing up in a Marvel comic since 2015. Number 3. Miss America. First appearing in Marvel Mystery Comics number 49, Miss America was a teenager named Madeline Joyce who was fooling around with scientific equipment in a scientist's lighthouse lab during a thunderstorm. The lighthouse was struck by lightning and she was shocked by the equipment and knocked unconscious for a week. When she awoke, she found that she had developed superpowers. During World War II, she joined the super team, the All Winners Squad, and helped fight the Axis forces. After the war, she married her teammate, the WHIZZER, and the two had a child. Unfortunately, their power combination led to the baby being a radioactive mutant who was soon taken away by the government. They tried to have another child, but this one was even more radioactive and was stillborn. The radiation caused Madeline to die of radiation poisoning mere hours later. When she was alive, she had the ability to fly and superhuman stamina and durability, being about as resistant to damage as, say, Jessica Jones. She was trained in hand-to-hand combat by Captain America and is said to possess the strength of 1,000 men. She used to have X-ray vision, but that was soon retconned away, perhaps to avoid a lawsuit from DC Comics. Miss America was the 3rd female superhero to receive her own solo title, being beaten only by Wonder Woman and Sheena the Jungle Queen. Number 2. The first Human Torch. Not the iconic member of the Fantastic Four you may be thinking of, the original Human Torch was a humanoid android designed by a scientist to be a perfect imitation of humanity. Due to a bizarre design flaw, whenever the android was exposed to air, he would burst into an extremely hot flame. The android achieved sentience and went on a run through the city, burning everything he touched and being unable to control his fire. He eventually learned how to control himself and became one of the most popular Marvel crime fighters of the Golden Age. He was retired as a character not long after the end of the Golden Age, and his name and power set were reused for Johnny Storm when the Fantastic Four stories began being published at the beginning of the Silver Age. He was eventually brought back, but it is fair to say that he is the more obscure version of the character. He is able to set himself ablaze and cast fire at his enemies. He can also fly and is of course immune to heat. His fire can go out if he is put in a zero oxygen environment, whereupon he will enter into stasis mode until he is exposed to the open air. He also has the distinction of appearing in the first issue of the comic that would eventually be the namesake of one of the most profitable entertainment companies in the world in 1939's Marvel Comics #1. Number 1. Namor the Submariner. First appearing in 1939's Motion Picture Funnies Weekly #1, Namor the Submariner has the distinction of not only being the first mutant in Marvel Comics, but also being the very first comic book anti-hero to ever appear. When the Atlantean princess Fen fell in love with a surface dweller named Leonard Mackenzie, the result was Namor, who was raised in Atlantis. In his early Golden Age appearances, Namor would wage battle against the surface world, attacking everything from ships to buildings and coming into conflict with the Golden Age Human Torch in one of the first comic book crossovers ever released. He became more heroic during World War II when he joined the Allied forces and got his own series in 1941. Like many of the Golden Age characters, he was retired in the early 50s when superheroes lost much of their popularity before being reintroduced in 1962 in Fantastic Four #4, where it was revealed he'd been living as an amnesiac hobo. He became an anti-hero once again and has remained a staple of the Marvel Universe ever since, recently being adapted for the silver screen in the movie Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. He is capable of surviving on land and underwater, and has super strength that makes him able to go toe-to-toe with strong characters like the Thing, Thor, and even the Hulk. He also has super speed, both above and below the water. He has superhuman durability and the ability to telepathically persuade fish to do his bidding. You know, like Aquaman always gets made fun of for doing. He's been shown to be able to affect the weather, and as if all that wasn't enough, he has little wings on his ankles that allow him to fly at incredible speeds. Not only is he the most powerful Marvel hero of the Golden Age, but he is one of the most powerful of any age, having fought multiple Avengers at the same time without much issue.
Number 10. Black Panther. The leader of Wakanda made his first comic book debut appearance in Fantastic Four issue 52 in 1966. He is often credited with being the first black superhero to appear in comics. The only sad thing is that it took us that long to get one. The 60s! Such a long time in comics, so long. He was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. The first story involving him in the pages of Fantastic Four Volume 1 are pretty hilarious and great. If you haven't read them, you kind of should. They're interesting. Black Panther invites the Fantastic Four to Wakanda. Naive as they are, they accept. But what they don't know is that Black Panther longs to fight them. Of course, while the comic originally seems to be spinning Black Panther as a villain, it is later revealed that he only wanted to test them, and the fighting was merely to prove their merit as he needs their help. In the next issue, issue 53, we learn more about his backstory and why he has sought out the Fantastic Four. We are also introduced even more to the land of Wakanda with its unique combination of new age tech and tradition, old and new. So there you have it. Number 9. Green Lantern. Before Hal Jordan or Guy Gardner, there was Alan Scott. He was the first Green Lantern and was created by Martin Odell, making his comic book debut in All-American Comics issue 16. When this first Green Lantern made his appearance, he probably seemed to be pretty cool, I'm sure. This was way back when the Green Lantern was still an actual lantern, by the way. It's just this lantern he was carrying around. But in retrospect, Alan Scott is known as being one of the silliest Green Lanterns, because he has one of the strangest weaknesses in comic book history. Wood. While there definitely wouldn't be openly gay superheroes for some time yet since he was introduced in 1940, I like to think the fact that he is helpless against wood might pose a double or symbolic meaning. I'll just let you ponder what you will about that. But that's just me. Either way, the weakness is a hilarious one to see in comics, just villains beating him with wooden clubs and baseball bats, and it would later be fully explained and made semi-logical later on, but still, it's ridiculous. And I love it. Number 8. Lone Ranger. The Lone Ranger originally started appearing in a comic strip and would later receive his own comic book series in 1948, which went for over 100 issues. Before he was even in comics though, Lone Ranger was a superhero recognized for his radio show, which debuted in the early 1930s. The first few comics consist of compilations of his comic strips, but new stories began with Lone Ranger starting with issue 38, which saw Paul S. Newman writing and Tom Gill on art. The Lone Ranger was known as a mysterious masked Texan Ranger who would fight bandits and outlaws in the Wild West of America, with his loyal pal Tonto and his trusty steed Silver. Hi ho Silver away!
Number 7. Captain America. By far the most popular and enduring of Marvel's Golden Age heroes, Steve Rogers was a frail and sickly young man who wanted to serve his country in World War II, but was discounted from service due to his poor health. He was chosen to participate in a secret military experiment that used a super soldier serum to grant him increased strength and intelligence. He honed his skills as a master strategist and martial artist, and with his vibranium and adamantium alloyed shield, he was instrumental in helping the Allied forces in the Marvel Universe turn the tide in the war. The character remained popular until the war ended, but he failed to find an audience in post-war America and was mostly shelved until the Silver Age. He was eventually reintroduced to readers in 1964 when Avengers number 4 revealed that he had been frozen in a block of ice near the end of the war, and he was thawed out to lead the new team. While he may not be the most powerful of the Golden Age heroes on this list, he's by far the most beloved by readers.
Number 6. Superman. Superman is that hero that you usually think of when someone asks who the oldest superhero is during a trivia night. And honestly, I'm sure it's an acceptable answer by most trivia standards. But not here. Not here. Here we go further. Superman is widely thought of as being one of the oldest, the original American comic book superhero. But seeing as how he is number 6 on this list, I think us mega nerds would likely know otherwise. Still, he came out in 1938 and first debuted in Action Comics number 1. And honestly, if you read his original appearance, it's easy to see what all the hullabaloo is about. It's basically a piece created to show off and introduce just how unstoppable Superman is. In fact, Superman would continue to be presented as near invincible until the 80s, acquiring more and more powers with each appearance. And then we had to fix that. We had to tweak that because it's too much power. Superman was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Number 5. Sheena, Queen of the Jungle. You might be wondering just where Wonder Woman is on this list, but Sheena actually predates Wonder Woman, and her own self-titled series even predates Wonder Woman's by a few months. She was originally published by Fiction Comics and was known as Sheena, Queen of the Jungle. Most 1930s Queen of the Jungle I have ever seen, but yet. Sheena's abilities included super strength and agility, and the ability to communicate with animals. She made her first appearance in WAG Comics issue number 1, and her self-titled series came out in early 1942, just a few months before Wonder Woman's. Only a few months, so close, so close! Number 4. Kazar. Kazar is known as being one of the first Marvel superheroes. Can you guess who the other one is? Let me know in the comments. But there are actually 2 Kazars. The one I'm referring to here is David Rand. He appeared in Marvel before they were even known as Marvel, back when they were Timely Comics in 1936. Kazar shared many similarities with Tarzan and was very passionate about protecting the surrounding wildlife and animals where he grew up. He also fought against Germany with the Allies in World War II, fun fact. In fact, the last story we have of him shows him setting out to provide more wartime aid. The other Kazar we would meet later in the 60s was known as Kevin Reginald, and was the son of the man who discovered Savage Land. Both Kazars also appear to be English. They had an English heritage anyways. Interesting. Number 3. The Phantom. The Phantom originated in comic strip form, where so many superheroes were originally born. He was created by Lee Falk. The Phantom actually introduced the idea of a costumed adventurer to American comic books. Before that, we didn't really have people in like tight spandex running around. While the Phantom, aka Kit Walker, found popularity in comic strips in the US, his comics didn't quite shine so bright. Internationally, however, the character seemed to do much better, becoming a hit in Australia, Sweden, and Papua New Guinea. He also was originally from a fictional country in Africa, so no wonder he did well in Papua New Guinea. I feel like they were like, I can see some similarities here. Number 2. Buck Rogers. Buck Rogers first appeared in a comic strip. He is a hero who comes from a world of sci-fi set in the future of the 2400s. 24,000s? 2400s, yeah, 2400s. Depending on what medium or comic you're reading, the last 2 digits of that year are also apt to change for his story. He made his comic strip debut as Buck, but the character was originally named Anthony Rogers in the novel that inspired the comics, Armageddon 2419 AD, written by Philip Francis Nolan. The story follows the adventures of a young man who is frozen for almost 500 years in suspended animation before waking up in the future and rediscovering the world he once knew, in a time that he is less familiar with. Honestly, if you aren't aware of Buck Rogers, but you are a fan of cosmic superheroes or sci-fi and weird space adventures, I highly recommend you check this classic out. Also, if you just like some time travel-y stuff. Who doesn't like time travel-y stuff? Everyone is like me, I hate it, but there's a few of us I know that like it. Number 1. Spring-Heeled Jack. Spring-Heeled Jack was originally a character in English folklore and urban legends. His being was reportedly cited all over Great Britain in the 1830s, and the stories involving him inspired writers to use him as a character in both a play and in Penny Dreadful novels, which were short serials, the original comic books really of the time. He has since seen other comic book series dedicated to him as time has progressed. Spring-Heeled Jack was originally described as a gentlemanly looking demon, and later described as looking like the devil himself, complete with horns. He was often known for breathing fire. Whoa, scary stuff. While his character was originally posed as a villain, he later developed into a misunderstood hero, a nobleman who sought to steal from the rich and give to the poor, complete with his own gadgets to help him perform his noble feats. Kinda like Robin Hood meets Batman. It's kinda what he was doing. Meets a guy that looks like a demon. Just combine all those, you got Spring-Heeled Jack.